Hey guys, welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be putting the input and output AC power on the FlexBoss21. So I'm going to be going into the house, I'm going to be playing around in the main breaker. Then I'm going to hook this panel here up to the FlexBoss for the output power, and the input power I'm going to reroute it so that it comes into the FlexBoss from the main panel first and then out to this panel here. I'm going to be also hooking up the CT sensors inside of the house, as well as I'm going to put a whole home surge protector in the house. And I have that here. So I have a Schneider panel in the house, and this is just a neutral clip-on whole home surge protector, very easy to install, as well as I'm going to be putting the CT sensors for the FlexBoss on the main panel. Now to start this video, I'm not an electrician, I don't hold any certifications. This is just me documenting my install. If you out there are looking to do something like this, I would highly suggest that you hire a professional. Okay, so first I'm going to start off, I have to kill the PV power. So I have put a 1-inch PVC conduit into the FlexBoss, and I have my PV input running through that. So as you can see here, my PV comes in and runs into the FlexBoss on number 3 for the PV input. There's 3 PV inputs on this. So let's go outside and kill the power to the solar array. It's a bit of a shame that I am turning off the PV array because we haven't had very much sun lately, and we're gonna be missing out on some. If you can see, I have my battery cables. I do have an enclosure that I'm going to put over top of this area here so that these aren't exposed. But let's come over to my battery bank, and I need to shut down all these batteries. So I'm going to just shut down all of these batteries. And let's head back over to the inverter. And it looks like all the lights are off, but I'm going to test the battery to make sure. And I have no AC input. Okay, and I have about 4 volts and it's dropping, which tells me that the capacitors inside are starting to bleed off. So we are safe. I'm going to shut off the battery breaker, and then we are going to head in the house and start playing with the main breaker. Okay, now I'm down here in my utility room, and this is my main panel. So first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to kill the power in the garage and leave it off until I'm ready to actually install the wiring and that's all complete. Then I'll come back in and turn that back on. So garage is now terminated, and I have a 60 amp breaker on the garage here. So for my garage I have a 60 amp breaker. And that is because I have a 4-gauge aluminum cable running out to the garage, which is a 60 amp. Now, if I had a 6-gauge copper, then again, that would be a 60 amp. So if you have aluminum or copper, you got to make sure you have the right size breaker for the conductor. But a 4-gauge is good for 60 amps of aluminum. I now have that turned off. I'm going to turn on some lighting in here. It is going to get dark once I kill the power. And the reason why I'm going to kill the power, and this is still going to be a very risky thing. Actually, I should go get some rubber gloves on. When I kill the power, I'm still going to have live 240 and 120 volts coming in through line 1 and line 2 up to my main breaker. And that is where I actually need to clamp these clamps on. So these CT clamps are going to let the inverter know how much power the house is using. Then it can push some back without going to the grid, and it'll monitor the power for me. When I go to install this, the best, highly recommended way that I could think of is to actually have the power company come out and take the meter head off, which will then kill power from the meter head down to my panel. Then nothing is live. So I don't have that option right now. I'm just going to do this the bad way. On here you can see it's designated. So it's designated PCS and grid. So I want the grid to be facing where it's coming in, and then this is going to go to the main breaker, and then that way they're not inverted. And then also, like I said, I'm going to be putting on a whole home neutral clip-on because of my style of panel. There are other styles of whole home surge protectors, so I'll leave links down below that you can install for your home. I highly recommend it. Basically what happens if there's a surge of power, either from one of your devices or the grid, it's going to take that and bleed it into the earth ground. And then that way none of your appliances get zapped. So good thing to have on your home. I'm going to run out and get some rubber gloves. I'll be right back. Okay, eye protection, glove protection. I'm going to see if I can move that camera to a better vantage point. Okay, this is the best I can do. Now, I do have my generator sub panel here, which in a future video, I'm going to have it so it back feeds into here. And then that way, if there's a power outage, it can switch from grid over to the inverter in the garage. And then nothing is going to backfeed to the grid as well, because the CT sensors, and also it'll recognize that grid power is down, so it won't send anything back to the grid. I'll just have it powering this in an outage. I'm going to take my panel cover off. I'm not going to kill the power just yet. Now, I did take note as well, so just really quickly, I'm going to install my surge protector down here at 2 open slots here. It does recommend in the manual to install it as close to the main disconnect as possible, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put it down here because the bus bar that runs in behind this panel, and I'll take this off and show you, the resistance on that bus bar is far less than the resistance on the breaker that's then running the wire through. Now, if I had a plug outlet close to this panel and I had something that I needed to protect that was very sensitive, then I would want to move that closer to my main shutoff. But all my sensitive equipment is pretty far down the circuit line. So I'm not going to be finicky about where I put this whole home surge protector. I believe it is going to protect everything I need it to if I install it a little bit lower on the bus bar. Now my Schneider panel is upgraded one, so all the bus bars are covered, but this solid metal running up to here. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to take this cover off. In case I drop this screw, I'm actually going to kill the power. So that's my neutral bars. That's my neutral coming in. These are the hot. In case I drop this screw, I'm just going to have the power shut down. Come on, there we go. Okay, now like I said, these lines are still hot. These are some CT sensors that I have for my iDro. It's just a monitor. I kind of want to keep these on here, and I hope they don't interfere with these CT sensors. So I'm going to try it with them on and see how that goes. But the first thing I want to do is route this cable. Okay. So, grid, and I'm also checking my wiring as I'm doing this to see if I see any splits or anything. I don't see any damage to the wiring. Okay, I think that's good. So these lugs here, I want to stay away from them. I don't like how close that is, but we'll try it. See what happens. Past the wires. The dangerous part, in my view, is almost over. Whew, okay. That part always makes me sweat. Okay, now this clip-on neutral, I want it right beside here. Oh, I think my light's done, which is actually just in time. And it's good, garage still off. And I have a green light. Okay, now I've got this tightened up so the cables are secured. And I have one of these butt connectors. This is for a Cat 7 cable, which is what is used for the CT sensors. You can see we have a metal jacket here. So that's going to be Cat 7. So I can plug that end in. Now I'm going to wrap these cables up a little bit because I have extra cable. Now in the manual, I believe it says you can go up to 300 feet without any kind of interference. I have an underground cable here that's buried. Oh, I gotta bring you up a little. So I have an underground cable, Cat 7, buried, running out to the garage, and it is 130 feet and then plus whatever this cable is that comes with the inverter. So with the two of them, I'm less than the 300 feet in the manual. So I'll come back and wire management that a little bit better. I just want to get things running here and get the garage back up. So let's head back out to the garage. So let's go from bar to bar, got 0, and we'll go from neutral to bar, nothing. Now I'm going to take this bottom cover off to reveal where this breaker is. Now this is a 100 amp breaker, and I'm going to be swapping it out for a 60 amp breaker because I'm going to be using 6 gauge wire to go from this from the inverter to the panel. So with a 6 gauge wire, you can protect the 6 gauge wire with copper with a 60 amp breaker. Now I have had a comment that somebody said that you want to do a 50 amp breaker, but breakers are only designed to protect the cable. So I'm going to put my breaker to the cable size that I'm going to be using. And this is the inside of my panel. So I'm going to remove the 100 amp main breaker, and I'm going to take these wires and turn them down out a knockout down at the bottom here. So I'm going to do that off camera. It's just easier. I'll be right back. Okay, and I think I'm all finished up on the hooking up the AC input and output. I did, however, run into a little bit of a mishap. These connectors that I got, I had to punch my own knockout in the knockouts that are provided because they were a little bit too big. So I punched my own, but in the process of trying to install these two, I guess they're called grommets, they were wiggling back and forth as I was working with the wire, which ended up blowing out the knockout anyways. So I had some aluminum and I made my own knockouts, and basically it's just sandwiching together for these guys here. So there's one on the bottom too, as you can see. So not a big deal. They do actually have washers that you can buy that make that bigger for the smaller thread here, but I'm a little bit too far away to any kind of Home Depot or anything like that to pick any up, so I just made my own right now. And then I have my load actually coming in this side, which then hits the load side, and then the grid side is coming in and crossing over and going to the grid side, just so it's a cleaner look on the outside. I didn't want these wires crossing each other going to the two panels. So basically, it's very messy. I need to clean up. But we'll run through. So right now, this is coming from the panel in the house on a 60 amp breaker, which then runs down in through. I have a chase nipple here connecting to this box, and the ground comes out, which is this wire, this aluminum wire, which is connected to the grounding lug, and I put no locks on there, which is this right here. You need to put this on if you're going from copper to aluminum. Stops it from corroding. But anyways, so my hot wire, my neutral, my second hot come down into this panel here. And this is just giving me a shut off. So it comes in from the top, drops into the bottom. And then when that is engaged, it's connecting these here. And then when that is tripped, then it disengages. So then it transfers over to 6 gauge wire, which is right here, and there's no locks on these connections here. Then I switch over to copper, and my ground wire comes up and connects into that grounding lug in the panel. And then that comes through this cable, which then comes up and runs into the grid side. And then my load side comes out, comes down into here, which then runs over. I cut the sheathing back a little bit, so I added a little bit over that. It's not the greatest looking, but I'll pretty it up. And that runs over into the 60 amp main breaker, which is then going to liven this panel, in theory. I guess what's left to do is I will fire up the batteries, and then I'm going to turn on the load for this to see if I can get my heater and everything to come back on, because we are in the winter and it is getting cold. So one moment. Oh, and something I just realized is my internet hub out here is not going to be powered, so I won't be able to connect and turn on the grid output on this. So I need to power that externally. Bouge RV, thank you very much. You were the first one that I can grab. All right, now that modem is going. Okay, so now I'm gonna turn on the batteries. Now my Pites battery has soft start. Oh, actually, I need to turn the battery switch on. Okay, I see some lights on the inverter. So I'm gonna turn on the rest of my batteries. Okay, I've got a normal light flashing. I need to flick this breaker on. Nothing yet. I think I have the discharging off application. Okay, now once I turn on backup power, it should click on. Nothing. There we go. Just took a minute. Oh, my fan just turned on. That's probably gonna get loud on the microphone. I'm gonna move back here out of the fan. Oh, there we go. Okay, look at that. 7,852 watts. Refresh. And we are off to the races. But I'm getting heat. Right now, I'm running off of battery power. So next, I want to plug in the CT sensor, and then I want to turn the grid on. Give me a minute and I'll get that set up. And I am almost ready to turn on the grid power. There we go. 438 watts, which sounds about right. So we are ready to turn on grid power. Contact. And there we go. We can see it there, 239. Now I'm not seeing anything for consumption in the house. I do have the CT sensors hooked up. They are right here, and that just runs down and runs out to the house. I think I'll need to play with that a little bit to see how to set all that up. Well, I'm gonna go check everything, see if I can't get those CT sensors working. I'm gonna have to do that in another video because I'm gonna have to show how I'm doing all my settings. What I'm basically thinking is, because I don't have a lot of solar right now, and it's winter time as well, what I'm thinking of doing is having the inverter backfeed the house during the day when there's peak electrical cost, and then at night have it charge up the batteries again, and then repeat every day so that I'm not consuming energy during peak time. Okay, so we are now a couple days later, and I have had some time to play with the equipment, so I have more of a grasp of what to expect when I do certain settings. So let's go over, and I just heard my heater shut off. You can see here quickly before this refreshes, but we have 8,046 watts coming out of the battery. And there you go, it just ramped down. It just refreshed because the main heater here in the garage, which is, can I get you to go up? Which is this 7,000 watt or 7,500 watt, 240 volt electric heater. But anyways, let's play with some settings. So when I was recording last time, I couldn't get the inverter to consume the house power. I have since gotten that to work, and basically what it was, I just had to wait 5 minutes for it. I guess it will track the power for a little while, and then in about 5 minutes, this will push power back to the house. Let's look at the settings here. So right now in my house, you can see we're just over 1 kilowatt. Let's look at some settings here. The settings I'm using are just to get me started. So I still need to tinker and play with them and get everything set up appropriately. You can see here CT reversed. I had to go back into the panel and switch the CT sensors from leg 1 to leg 2 because it does matter which, if you look in the instructions, it tells you to make sure to follow your line back so you have it either on leg 1 or leg 2. I had to switch mine because I had to enable this, but now I don't need to because I switched them. I also changed the orientation of the CT sensors. This app here that is keeping track of my usage from the grid, I put them behind the CT sensors that are for the EG4. So right now I actually have off-grid mode. So I have the off-grid mode on right now, which means that it is only going to power that panel, and anything behind the FlexBoss, it's not going to push back to the house. So we can disable that. So that is successful. I just heard a click, so now we are no longer in off-grid mode, but, and I'll refresh this here, but it's going to take about 5 minutes for this to come and actually start pushing back to the house. So now you can see there the consumption in the house is about 2,300. And if we come over here, refresh this, we're close to the same. I actually don't trust this monitoring my iDro very much. We're gonna refresh that. Okay, and we're still, now you can see it says 12. And on here, so we're kind of up and down. It's hard to go to one page to the next to show you exactly what the power is. But as you can see, the monitoring app is actually seeing how much we're consuming in the house. That's also going to add in what we're consuming in the garage here on that panel. So now it's combining the two of them. And I'll be back as soon as this starts to push back. It takes roughly about 5 minutes. Now you can see, it is, as you can tell through the window, it's very cloudy and not very sunny, so I'm only getting 31 watts out of the PV. You can see how the battery is tracking through, and now it is pushing into the house. We have 0 watts now coming in from the grid. And if we go back over to this, my iDro, you can see there now we're only consuming 114 kilowatts or 114 watts. Now we're down to 54 watts. And if we go over to the settings, if we go over to maintenance and we check this, I have my CT power offset minus 80 watts. So that just means that it's going to allow the house to consume from the grid 80 watts. So that 80 watts is not going to show up on the wattage coming from the grid here. It is going to be roughly consuming, it's going to try and at least roughly consume 80 watts. So you can see there, we have come down. So what my plan is during peak hours of electrical cost, which is between 7 and 7 basically. So the way I did that, and again, I still need to play around with the settings and figure this out. I'm going to stop on this page here in case anybody wants to take a look at what I've got set so far anyways. I'm running off a voltage. I don't have communications with my batteries, so I'm just calling them lead acid. So I have my AC charging enabled, and I have it to start AC charging at 1915. So that is 7:15. And then turning off 1 minute before 7 a.m. in the morning. All these other settings, because everything's disabled, so battery backup mode disabled, down here disabled for forced discharge and disabled for peak shaving. I still need to look into them and see. Now if we go over here to working mode, this is just basically another page. So some spaces you'll notice that you can change a setting in one page and it'll also change it in another page because there's a lot of duplicate settings on this this app here. But this is what I'm looking at. You can see this graph here. So AC charging is on, and then at about 7 o'clock it's forced discharge. This one here is self-consumption, I believe. So basically we're doing AC charging and then forced discharge to grid, but we're not going to grid, we're just discharging to the house when it needs it, and then back to AC charging. So yeah, it seems to be working. I think in about 10 days my electrical flips to the next month. So I think I'm going to hold off for 10 days, and then once I have a new electrical time frame, like you can see here, 9.4 days remaining on this time frame of electrical. So I think I'm going to wait the 10 days and then try and use this. Now one thing that I dislike is, so my peak hours 7 till 7, but that's during the week. Now on weekends and on holidays it's all off peak hour. So it would have been nice to have a setting where you can put weekends on here and not just a time of day. So we're Sunday right now, so it's all off peak hours, so I don't need this to run. So I'm gonna go back to off-grid mode. So you're gonna hear the inverter click. Oh, and the lights actually kind of gave a quick little flick, but nothing turned off. My router modem is still on, everything's still on. It was just a quick flash. So everything seems to be working just fine. So now you can see we're picking up a little bit of solar, nothing, and then everything's coming through the batteries. Now because I'm using lead acid, I don't have a way of keeping track of my overall state of charge. So for that I'm using this here, which is Solar Assistant. I have a Raspberry Pi hooked up to a Victron shunt, and that's keeping track of my accumulated amp hours. Now I do have an enclosure that I'm actually going to use and put over top of all this, just so no little fingers can come in here and poke around and touch any live equipment. But we can look at that here on the screen. So this is what my Solar Assistant looks like right now. Actually, I should have come to this screen when I had it, because this will keep track also of the load and everything that's coming from the grid and that pushing back. And you'll be able to see. Let's actually turn that on. Let's turn this back on. Off-grid disabled. So you can see here now, negative 1,229, 1,230 watts. So right now we're discharging from the battery. This is why I like Solar Assistant. It's an awesome platform. And I can even click here to battery. You can see we're discharging at 23.3, 23.1 amps. And we have 51.9 volts. Now, let's turn up the heat a little bit. So Solar Assistant is going to keep track of my cumulative amp hours, which now it's showing me I have 80%, and that's going to be through the Victron shunt here. But let's turn the heat up and see what that's doing now. So now you can see there we've got more power coming. So right now we're discharging at 182.1 amps. And what I like too also about the EG4 FlexBoss is we can come on here and we can actually set, where is it? Discharge settings. So you can see here discharge, I have it capped at 200 amps. So the FlexBoss is not going to discharge more than 200 amps at a time. It will, let's say I turn on the dryer right now in the house, it will supplement with grid power and not go over 200 amps, which, you know, I'm using 4-aught cable. So I could go, let's say, I could do the 300 amp discharge, but I need to test some more stuff before I put a really hard load on it. But yeah, you can see here, we're still discharging. We're discharging at 182 amps, which is great. So now it's showing me what the grid power is, which is about 0. So it's taking the load from the house and that heater and everything in the garage, and it's under the load side and the battery there. So now let's turn the heat off. And you can see we dropped down. So now it's just basically taking over the house. And now if I turn off in Solar Assistant and put that back on off-grid mode, then what's going to happen is the load is just going to show what that panel in the garage is using. Anyways, just thought I would nerd out there for a minute on that stuff. I'm going to do more videos on the FlexBoss21 as I hook more stuff up. My next course of action is I have a manual generator transfer switch in the house, which is running out. It has 10 gauge wire running out to a plug for a generator at 240 volts. So all my critical loads is in the manual transfer switch. Flick one breaker off, turn the little wheel, flick the next one on, and that is going to run off of the generator plug. So I'm going to remove the generator plug, put an enclosure, and I have 10 gauge wire running outside already, which is running to this Tech wire right now. So this is Tech 3. It's got 3 conductors and a ground, and it's running outside. I just need to connect the wires outside and then run this into this panel with a 30 amp breaker. And then that way, if there's ever a power outage, the garage will still run and you can switch over the power and have it coming from the FlexBoss into the house. Now they do have the Grid Boss, which essentially does the same thing that I'm going to do with a manual transfer switch, which was already installed in the house, so I might as well use it instead of buying the FlexBoss. But maybe I'll buy that FlexBoss in the future and hook it up. So yeah, I have the grid coming in here, runs in, connects into the flex, and then runs out and connects into the panel here. So essentially the garage is off grid, and I have the ability to backfeed into the house. So once I get more solar, it's going to be a lot more cost effective for me. And then also I'm going to try doing the off peak to peak hour charging and discharging and see how that goes. So hopefully there's not a lot of loss between going from DC to AC and back and forth, and it's profitable for me to run the batteries during the day and then the grid during the night when it's cheaper. If there's anything you guys want to see, maybe I'll overload this one day. I have a dryer out here now. I can hook that up with the heater and we can overload this guy and see what happens. So that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you very much for staying till the end. I'm going to do more videos on this in the future, so keep an eye out for that, and thank you for watching. Bye.